So the first question that I would like to ask is, how do you think COVID has impacted the fashion industry and how technology can help them solve the problem? Let's start with Rohit. All right. Before I hand over to Ardi, if any of you have any questions for the speaker, you can write it on the chat on the left bottom corner. Okay, Ardi.
All right. So the next question will be, what is your take on the fashion sustainability issue? Let's start with Rohit.
Okay, it's a tricky one. So I think, look, fast fashion comes at a very high environmental cost. I think it's well known and documented. I read somewhere that we as shoppers today buy 50% more clothes than customers did by 2 decades ago, 20 years ago. But importantly, we only keep them for half as long. So if you think about that, that's obviously going to create a challenge for the environment. So I think the sustainability problem in fashion, touches or encompasses different parts of the value chain, right from production, manufacturing, the supply chain, getting it into the stores. But we at Pixibo, we are focused on one part of this problem, which is the return rate problem. So if you think about it, right now in online fashion, the average return rate is about 35 to 40%. We have retailers in Europe who have a return rate as high as 60, 65%, which means that 1 in 2 products that go out actually come back to your warehouse. On top of that, it's quite common in advanced e-commerce markets for shoppers to buy multiple sizes of the same product. So let's say they're confused around size. They say, you know what, I'm going to buy small, medium, and large. And I'll get it all shipped to my house, treat my living room as a fitting room, try them all on, and send 2 of them back. Now, all of those packages going back and forth, that creates, quite a significant carbon footprint, right? So if you actually unpack why shoppers return products, when you buy clothes online, why do people return? That then, ends up being 3 or 4 reasons for that. One could be complete change in mind. You bought it, now it's come home, you're feeling guilty, you return the product. Second could be the product is faulty. So let's say maybe a couple of the buttons are broken or the zip doesn't work. So faulty products. Third could be just, a mismatch between the pictures and what shows up, right? So it's not what they expect. And the fourth is when things don't fit. Now, size and fit is the largest reason. Upwards of 50% of returns are due to size and fit. And as far as we know, there's no solution and there's no AI in the market that can predict the likelihood of a customer changing their mind. So what we say is the sphere of influence, which part of the problem can you actually do something about, and it's size and fit related return rates. So we sort of operate in that space. So we see that as the perfect intersection of being good for the shopper. So if you reduce return rates, it's great for the shopper because they get the size right. Consumers are also incredibly aware, about their own footprint. It's great for the retailer. A reduction in return rate goes straight into the bottom line, and it's great for the environment as well. So that's sort of where we are focused on. Sustainability is a complex topic, that encompasses different parts of it, and we are sort of trying to predict the likelihood of return, and by reducing that, we think we can make shoppers, the environment, and retailers happy. So that's where our sort of energy and focus lies.
Okay, thank you for that in-depth analysis. How about Zendy?
Thanks, Lee. Yeah, so I agree with mostly what Rohit says. I mean, sustainability is a very tricky subject, especially when it comes to textile and garment. But I also believe that it's all about optimizing consumer data. That's how we'll be able to improve the whole process. It needs to go directly from the consumer, which is the demand side, before we can actually optimize the supply side, right? And for us to be able to optimize the demand side, then we need to understand the customer a little bit, whether it's from the sizes, whether it's from their preferences. the thing about a lot of fashion brand, it's very much supply driven, right? Like a specific brand would basically produce how many thousands of SKUs, and they're expecting those to get acquired by their customers. And for what happened is that a lot of these fast fashion companies are not able to kind of get all these products out to customers. And in developed countries like America, because of how high it is to actually store products, they just basically just like waste it. They just burn it. So it's crazy. So I think before we even talk about recycling or upcycling a product, it's all really how can we actually improve the sheer volume of waste from just like producing more efficiently. If we, there is a research that there are now 800% more waste now compared to 1960. That's a whole bunch of growth in like the last 50, 60 years, right? So how can we just improve the whole production side? I think that's where we can actually improve it. At least in Yuna and Co, we don't try too much on producing ourselves. What we do is actually we help our suppliers and our merchants to basically find the right consumer. Right, we find out about the consumers' behavior, their preferences, and all that, and then we find the supply. We don't try to produce everything ourselves. We don't even try to produce as much anymore, and we try to kind of contribute to the whole fashion sustainability issue as well by encouraging our customers to basically donate their old clothes as well. So we have a program called Box of Hope, where we actually encourage our customers to basically send their old clothing along with our return box if they don't. So if they don't have anything that they want to return, when we send them styles, they can actually return their old clothings, delivered to us. And all of these clothings, we will basically collect them and send it to like communities and like people in need. So like on January we had like flood in Jakarta, so we donate some of this clothing to flood victims in Jakarta. So that's our own initiative. Obviously, we are kind of like putting this on hold a little bit during the COVID-19 situation because of how high contact that is, and it's going to be very high risk for our employees. So, but yeah, as soon as like the whole COVID-19 pandemic has kind of like shifted down, then we'll definitely want to kind of continue this program. I think this has been a very good program for everybody.
How about in terms of the fabrics? Maybe you guys know, like, are there initiatives to use more of
recyclable
renewable fabrics instead of maybe some fabrics have like plastics, right?
Yeah.
And what do you guys think?
So so fabric is so I've been talking to a lot of producers as well, and I met quite a few different companies in China as well that are creating enzymes to basically separate garments. So they can actually separate between the plastics of the polyester with the cotton and the nylon and all that. So they can actually separate that properly, and then they kind of like process it again into new yarns again. So there are already some of those initiatives happening in like in the European country, in China, in the US market. But the thing is, the cost for doing that itself is it's still too high.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't see a lot of garment or textile companies in developing countries like in Indonesia or Vietnam would be adopting that kind of a methodology yet. Obviously, that would be the future, but we must find a way to basically optimize the whole process and make it a lot cheaper first. So that's one. And second, in terms of fabric itself, sure, we can use things like cotton, but actually if we're using polyester, it's actually a lot easier, again, to separate the particles around, instead of using cotton and other materials. Some of these materials are better for long wear, so you don't really have to keep buying new things. You just kept wearing that for like ages. There was this one lady that I met in Singapore, and she is like a huge fashion sustainability ambassador. And I had a very good talk with her. So she owns this Chanel jacket that she has been wearing for 10 years over and over. And this is very how to say, like very it's not very common for a lot of people, right? Most people are just very much driven by consumption. They see new products and they want to consume it. But for people who are actually having this kind of consciousness, then they would actually choose the more expensive products but last longer. But just be realistic. People with that kind of conscience are still very much lacking. So yeah, again, we also need to educate the market as well on that.
Yeah. I think I would just add, the positive is that right now the industry is incredibly aware of this topic. So I think, as Wendy said, there's a whole lot of innovation around, alternative materials, even reducing the water consumption, right? So if you think about the amount of water that goes into making a pair of jeans, it's higher than you think. And but I think if you juxtapose all of that with what consumers are used to. Consumers are used to low prices, free returns, and all of that. So that the problem is very nuanced. And I think we, like our role as a B2B company, we are enablers. So we meet different types of retailers. And recently we signed a company here in Singapore called SansFaf, very interesting company run by this amazing entrepreneur Brandy Dallas, and they're using their core sustainability is one of their core themes, and I think the fabric has a lot of sort of bamboo in it. So I think the trend is definitely there. It's going to be challenging, as with any technology, right? To start bringing those sort of materials into a price point that can also be affordable for consumers. But the very interesting thing is, shoppers are sort of more woke right now. They all are, they're pushing retailers saying, look, this is not okay. I want to know where my clothes were made. I want to know what goes into it. And guess what? If consumers start demanding that, retailers become, very aware of that. So I think it's definitely trending in the right direction. The short-term focus, I think, or the sort of the lowest hanging fruit for retailers will be in the pre-owned space. And creating more circularity, right? Which, if you look at even the investor community is sort of resonating with that. And there's these large marketplaces, the real Poshmarks, Vestiaire, they're all being funded, where you can extend the life of apparel. So I think that's something where regular shoppers previously, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, there was stigma associated with buying secondhand clothing. A lot of people, I know would be like, no way, I'm going to buy something, used clothing. And I think that's gone. That has that's shifted. So I think it's going to be a process, but I think the industry is incredibly aware of that, and we're going to see a sort of a next wave of entrepreneurs who will launch direct to consumer fashion brands that have sustainability as pretty much their core theme and mission.
Yeah, I think if it's pre-owned by a celebrity, I think it's people wanting it. But if it's pre-owned by your neighbor, no one wants it.
Yeah, fair point.
All right. Next question. What is the future of the offline and online fashion industry in the post-COVID era? Let's start with Zendy.
Okay, I think this is just my own personal opinion. Obviously, it's going. I think it's going to be very much consumer driven. That's why I think even in the investment market, direct to consumer has been on the rise as well. And what I mean by direct to consumer is it's not just about owning a brand called Yuna & Co. and then I'm start selling and producing my own clothing. It's not that kind of a thinking, but direct to consumer meaning that it's really understanding about what the customer wants, intently. I think that's how it's so different. That's why it's only can be done now when data can already be kind of like processed better compared to like 20-30 years ago, when people can just open and go into a department store and you select from all of those available clothing. Nowadays, if we can actually predict what the customer wants in terms of trend, in terms of based on cultural and socioeconomic condition, we can understand, like Rohit says, from sizing and fitting. Then we'll be able to kind of like produce things that customer actually wants. And what we'll see is this will also impact the sustainability part as well. So I think the future of the market is not just about like creating a whole bunch of product, selling it on your retail store. But what's going to happen online and offline is that, online we are from the supply side, how can we actually provide that? And on the consumer side, I believe the biggest change would be definitely on the offline side, on the retail. How can we don't really need to store a whole bunch of different items in the retail store, but it's just really for experiential. That's the way I see it. And once customer actually get the experience, they see what they want, they can actually try it on, then everything can be sent on from other channels, right? So I think that's the way that the whole thing will kind of evolve, especially in developing market. I think this kind of movements have been more adapted in markets like in the US. That's why a lot of department stores are closing down as well. So yeah, I think that's probably going to be the biggest change. That's what I think.
All right, thank you, Zendy. How about you, Rohit?
Yeah, look, I think what will change. Again, my personal view. I think everything. This industry is probably going to rapidly reset. I think as an outsider, my background, as you can probably tell, I'm not a fashion designer, right? So one of the things we see in fashion is that there is this tendency to do things the way it's always been done. Resort to the age-old practices. And I think on the back of a sort of a pandemic and sort of a period of economic contraction, we will actually see this. The industry will go back, or will go to what I call first principles thinking. Right, so they'll actually say, look, let's, all bets are off. Let's start again. Let's start afresh, right? So, and we're already seeing signs of that. So when the lockdown happened over the last two to 3 months, what did we see retailers do, right? They moved really quickly. They canceled orders. They shut their stores. It was sad, but it needed to be done, right? Unprofitable stores were just literally axed. They switched very quickly to technology-based solutions like live stream commerce, and even solutions like ours, contactless try-on, using 3D-based design solutions, to bring in efficiencies. So I think that will become the norm. So we're going to see a sort of a higher bias towards action. The fashion industry, of course, was innovative. I'm not saying we weren't, but just especially with large legacy retailers, the sort of the gulf between wanting to do something and actually doing something was pretty large. And we saw that, we sell an innovative solution, and between convincing a stakeholder, budgets, and actually getting something done, it does take a long time. And I think this sort of a reset will make retailers question everything, right? What, as Zendy said, what should we produce? How much should we produce? In what sizes should we produce? Should we have a store? Well, should the store be this big? What should we carry in that store? All of that has been previously based on conventional thinking. Oh gosh, we've got to have a high street presence. Which is the largest mall in Singapore or Jakarta? We've got to have a presence there, right? So I think, in a way, for the fashion industry, or at least the brands that will survive and thrive, will be the ones that actually look at this and say, okay, look, let's not do things because this was, the way it's always been done. And I think it'll be, it's a huge opportunity for brands who adapt, for direct-to-consumer brands, for, companies like Yuna and Co., for enablers like us to actually say, look, let's partner together and figure this out. A lot of the rules are going to be rewritten. The way in which consumers would interact with your brand is going to be quite different from what before. And yeah, let's just be nimble. So I think that's the way I see it. I think pretty much the brands that will win will be the ones that are not sort of constrained by legacy thinking. So it could become really exciting for the space.
So are you saying that it will be a combination of online solutions, giving solution to the offline?
Yeah, I'd say it'll be a hybrid. So let me give you an example. So let's say, for instance, an offline player, right? So a traditionally offline player has always had this view that, okay, look, online is almost a side project. Like just because vast majority of their turnover has come from a retail footprint. So I think the savvier offline players will now start thinking, okay, let's think of a way in which we can use our store footprint to actually drive e-commerce and have a unique offering. So things like, buy online, pick up in store, buy online, do a curbside pickup, right? So I think you will find all kinds of hybrid solutions. You might have an instance where a shopper would come into an offline store and the retail store makes it easy for them to buy online. So shop the endless catalog, shop products that are not physically in the shop. The other way around as well, an online brand might say, you know what, this is the product, get it shipped to our experience store. We have, a few experience stores, come in here. If it doesn't fit, you can return it, on the spot. So I think the line will become blurry, I think, Ardi. So like this conventional thinking, offline and online, it'll be more experience-based. It'll be, more, let's play to our strengths. So if I'm a retailer that has sort of like what Walmart have done really well with Amazon, right? They didn't compete with Amazon on Amazon's terms. They leveraged their own retail footprint and said, you know what, you could come into any of our Walmarts and pick up your groceries. So I think that's what I mean. So I think if you're a direct-to-consumer online brand, you could use retail strategically with a couple of experience centers. If you are an offline brand with centers with a bunch of legacy shops, you might want to reconsider the size of your estate and even the size of your shops, but still use shops strategically, right? Where you can streamline the entire return process. So I think that stuff will probably take some time, to be clear. But the focus would be on experimenting and figuring out what works.
All right, thank you.
About the online, do you think there is some influence from the influencer? Can they really drive the growth for the online? How about you,